Hello again, awesomes. How we doing? Welcome again to week three. This video here, I want to talk to you, start talking a little bit more about team writing, all right? And I want to kind of looking specifically at chapter one and even more specifically than that. This is about planning because you're going to do a lot of that this week, right? But I mean, as part of, before you kind of get to the team charter, especially when you get to the team management and you start assigning roles, we start thinking about who's going to do what. We need to think about, okay, how do we want to approach this as a group? And you'll recall from our reading in chapter one, and I would draw your attention very specifically to page 6, where Wolf talks about these three different collaboration methods, right? There's face to face, she calls divided, all right, and then she calls it layered. And these three are very, very interesting because I think if you determine those early, and assign the necessary roles, and you understand how you're going to go about do it, then as you're assigning roles, those roles can take on and have more responsibility. It can be more clear, right? It can be more what the expectations are. Set the expectations early, especially in your first meeting this week, right? When you're planning what you're going to be doing and you're assigning roles. That's why I said in the week three overview, on the week three overview, kind of give you like a synopsis. And I said, make sure that you listen and make sure that you're honest and be responsible and be respectful to each other. If you have a specific skill set that you feel that you bring, let your team know that. All right. And I said in that week three overview video too, on that week three overview page 2, you don't need to be perfect at everything. You can't be skilled in every single aspect of the research project when you're working collaboratively. Realize where your strengths are and be honest about those strengths, right? I monitor my time here because what's so important. So here's a quick example. So 2 years ago, I had a group, and there was one particular, the team manager, right, had a video conference with me, if you will, and he said, I've got one member in particular who really good at I don't say all that they're really good at, but their proclivity was to find and fine tune the details. You know, the APA, make sure every single APA reference was done correctly, page numbers were centered, that this was done, that the graphs were working, that they were. He was really skilled at this particular aspect of it, but he could also contribute to the other. So, in their approach, right, a good manager in this case, right, decided to put him in charge of that, while the others, not saying he didn't have as good a responsibility, but what he did, since he was he was really good at this, as they were writing and getting stuff done, he would go in and he was the editor, he was the proofreader, right? He was in charge of design. He was in charge of making sure that everything looked good, that everything was up to code, if you will, right? He was kind of like the inspector, if you will, and that was his role. And that wasn't it's not a diminished role. That's a very important role, right? When you present to your audience, he understood who his audience was, and he knew what was important about that. These things looked a certain type of way, and he made it look like. By the time that thing was done, by the time their project 5A was done, that thing looked like it came out of a textbook. It was one of the best ones I've ever seen, and it wasn't that everyone had to do everything, right? So let's review. Face to face, the entire team sits down and writes the document together. Well, obviously, in the COVID situation that we're in, I'm not discouraging and saying that you can't do that, right? With the vaccines and other things in place, provided safety is first. Okay, safety is paramount. That's one option. Divided, the group breaks the document into sections and assigns each team member a section. All right. So in the example I just gave you, he didn't have necessarily a specific section. He had the entire document that he was responsible for, right? And that appealed to him and it appealed to the group, and it worked very, very, very well. And you could do something very, very similar. Someone's going to write the introduction, someone's going to write that, but someone still has to go back and still make sure that it's one cohesive, right? Unified, clear, right, document. Or you can do layered. Each person of the team is assigned one or more specific roles, right? Each person works on the document in turn, adding his or her contribution as you go along. So in that example, an example I gave, it's closer a little bit to a layered, but everyone else had a role, and then there was layers within that. It was kind of like a hybrid in a way. So feel free to borrow and use when you're planning this out and you're assigning roles. Think about what your approach is going to be so that it's really, really clear for everybody, and make sure and listen. Stay safe. Stay awesome, guys.